it's 11 o'clock, time to start the program. So I want to share with you today's advanced class series, and there's going to be one a month. Today's topic is reversing the aging process. All right, then let's get started on this. So what are some of the features associated with aging? Why do people say that I don't want to age, or I want to stay young, or I want the youth thing plan? So if you have any thoughts around that, I'll share with you some of the thoughts that I've come across when I work with clients. One of the things that scares them about aging is the fact that as they grow older, as you can see this silhouette that's shown in front of you in the graphic, is they feel they become less mobile, less able to do things, less able to have fun. How often have you heard people who are retiring only to not be able to travel because of their condition or enjoy life? So you work all your life, do things, maybe amass some money for retirement, and then you pretty much can't enjoy that because you can't travel, or perhaps you've got other chronic conditions. And so people, when they talk about aging, it's not about the fact that they're aging. It's about really different about quality of life. So, I mean, I could be 300 years old, but if I was as feeling as vital and thriving as right now, I wouldn't mind being 300 years old. So aging is synonymous with the health and well-being and the quality of life. So I'd like us to think about lifespan of a human being. I'd like us to think, redefine it slightly. Instead of thinking of this as a lifespan of getting old, let's talk about it as health span. So if we were to say that I'd like to increase my health span and decrease my disease span, would that be a more accurate reflection of really what I mean by reversing the aging process? In other words, if I were to live 300 years, but I had a healthy existence during those 300 years, I don't mind aging. However, if I were to live to 80 years and 20 of those years, I've been going back and forth to doctors and feeling sick and not being able to do anything and had to retire early, and maybe had disability, that to me is disease span. And why would you want to live 300 years chronically ill? And that's really what we want to do, is we want to define this aging process into a health span and a disease span. So to increase the health span and to reduce the disease span. Type in any questions you have in the chat area. I've allocated a lot of time for Q&A in case you have any questions. All right. So the first part of the 4 parts we're going to discuss today. The first part is we want to look at the power of the heart, because in all of this we're going to look at health span, increasing your health span, but we won't only give you the theory behind it. We're going to show you how to increase your health span, and it does not involve drugs. So I'm going to take you through the 4 parts of the aging process and what is involved in the aging process. And I want to share with you some of the scientific research that's been discovered very recently. And I want to share with you some of the techniques that have shown to actually increase the health span. And all of that you can do using just 15 minutes a day. You can do that. Okay, so we'll come to that very shortly here. So the first thing we want to talk about is the power of the heart. So let's briefly discuss that. Can you tell someone's birthday, someone's age, without knowing the birthday? And this is, some people can guess some people's birth date. When people guess my age, they usually think I'm 10 years younger than I really am. And I've worked on myself, and I've used these techniques to actually reverse my aging process. So one of the things from a scientific perspective, now you may try and guess people's ages, and you may be wrong, or you may be wrong in the wrong way. You may think somebody's 55 when they're 35. It happened to me when I was actually at my second daughter's birth. I was in the waiting room, or at least watching just outside the waiting room as my child was born, and I had to leave the room uh, because the nurses had to deal with certain things. I was waiting outside, and a gentleman came to me. Now, remember, this was 18 years ago. Came to me and said to me, "Oh, congratulations on the birth of your granddaughter." I was, I looked quite old then. When I was in the corporate world, I was not working out. I wasn't looking after myself. And if you look at me now, I'm not a grandfather yet, but I look a lot younger than I did before. So it's difficult to tell someone's age, um, sometimes, because sometimes they age faster, and we want to talk about that today. But here's a scientific way of telling someone's age without really knowing the birth date. And that was a paper that was written a while back with one of the scientists from the HeartMath Institute, Roland McCraty. This slide is very busy right now, but don't worry about the slide at all. Let me share with you some of the things that they did come up with. What they said was, when you measure your heart's rhythm, so the rhythm of your heart, and that's all you need is to measure the rhythm of your heart. The quality of the rhythm of your heart tells the scientist how old you may be. And within 75% accuracy, they can tell you how old you are. Okay. Now, they can also tell you that based on your quality rhythm of your heartbeat, you should be, for example, 40 years old. Now, if you are 30 years old and you display that quality of the heartbeat that they have just measured over a 24-hour period, that means you have accelerated your aging. Your heart rhythm should really show that you are 30 years old, but in your case, you're showing you're 40 years old, and so on. It is possible to improve the heart rhythm so that it synchronizes with your chronological age. And most of the time, that means you have to reduce your stress levels. Okay, many people are overly stressed, and this is what is shown in the next slide. Is that when we talk about heart rate variability, and now I want to show you what is it that they measure to tell you what your chronological age might be compared to what your cellular age might be. The two things need to line up. So in order for you to understand that, let's talk about what they measured and why why they're able to tell your age. All right. So the one thing that they were able to measure was the beats of each heart. So if you look at the bottom of this particular screen, you see the red heartbeats. Every beat of your heart is right here. Okay. Now, in these heartbeats, you will notice something very interesting, and many people don't know this, that every heartbeat has a different distance between the pair. So you can see that the heartbeats are getting longer and longer, between 8 and 10 seconds, and then they're getting back shorter and shorter. Now, if you say that each heartbeat, for example, represents a representation of a beat per minute. So you know how your physician puts his or her hand on your hand and kind of checks your pulse rate. That's just an average. If you say you had a 60 beat per minute average pulse rate, that's just an average. But every pulse pair of beats has a different pulse rate to it if you were to allow that to continue. And so what the folks did who wrote that paper is that they represented each pair of heartbeats with a particular beat per minute representation. And what they saw, and this has been known for decades, that your heart rate slightly increases, and you can see this curve, the blue curve going up, as you take a deep breath in, and then as you exhale, it slowly reduces. So your heart rhythm is always, that's why it's called a rhythm, because your heart rate is going up slowly and then coming back down slowly. So your heart is not beating constantly. It is actually moving through a rhythm, and that's why they call it heart rate variability. Okay, and that's a normal thing, As a matter of fact, this is what obstetricians measure as a woman's about to give birth, is to measure the child's heart rate variability. And if the heart rate variability is there, if there's a high variability between the peaks and the valleys, the baby is actually healthy. Otherwise, they have to go right in, and baby is distressed if it's not that high and low. So that's really what your heart rate variability is. And this is what can indicate your actual cellular biological age, which may not be the same as your chronological age. Okay. Now let's look at one that has actually been measured. If you look at the left-hand side of the heart rate variability chart, this is an actual measurement of somebody who's wearing a chest strap, which measures the heart rhythms. And you can see on the left-hand side that it's a very erratic movement. This represents shallow breathing or very stressful condition. On the right-hand side, you will see that the rhythm of the heart becomes very, very coherent. You know, there's some nice ups and downs there, very rhythmic. And so this is the same person, and what he did was he applied the technique, which I want to show you the first stage of that technique very soon here, so we can practice it together. When he applied that technique, you look at 100 seconds into this particular measurement, you would see the beautiful rhythm just by applying this technique. And you can do this very quickly. So you went from stress mode to less stressed mode. And here's the important part. The actual telling of your biological age has to do with the difference between the peaks and the valleys of this rhythm. So when you start doing these techniques, you can actually increase the difference between the peaks and the valleys, and that arrow that represents that difference. In that instance, you are becoming more healthier, and you are actually reversing your aging process. You're actually slowing down the aging. You're not accelerating your aging. On the left-hand chart, between 0 and 100 seconds, your aging is accelerating. And this is what's happening when you're stressed out on the left-hand side, and what happens when you quickly apply a technique that gets you less stressed out, which means that you're reversing your aging process. You're actually reducing the trajectory of that fast accelerated aging. And that's what we mean by reversing the aging process. And I want to show you why, in all likelihood, you and everybody on this call, on this participation, and everybody that you know are likely having an accelerated aging process. And to reverse this aging process is a very simple technique. Let us do the first step of that technique. I'm going to take you through a 5-minute heart-focused breathing technique. This is the technique that will get your heart rhythm going from the erratic one, perhaps, that if you're having, to one that is of rhythmic nature. And if your body can actually develop this ability to be able to breathe in this way for 24 hours on the average, you will have already reversed your breathing, your aging, I should say. So let us begin this first step in heart-focused breathing technique. So there are 2 steps involved here, and this is the very basic breathing technique. We will build on that later on to give you a little bit more advanced technique so you can actually practice this after today. So the first step of this, so I'll tell you what the steps are, and then I will walk you through it, I'll guide you through it. The first step is to actually bring attention in the area of the heart. Studies have shown that wherever you bring attention in the area is where energy is sent. And you can actually measure this. For example, if you hold out your hand and you focus your attention in your little pinky on your right hand, and if you were to measure the heat that's going to that pinky compared to all the other fingers on that hand, you will actually measure a higher level of heat coming out of the pinky finger. And that's essentially what's happening when you put attention in a particular area. So very important to note that when you actually focus your attention in the area of the heart, that energy is being sent to the heart. Then the next thing you do is you imagine your breath flowing in and out of your heart or chest area. And if you want to breathe a little slower and deeper, that's the best. The heart math scientists called it a six breath protocol. By that, they mean that you're taking 10 seconds of breathing in and out. So 5 seconds of breathing in, 5 seconds of breathing out. And you do that as a six of those to make it over in a minute. So 6 breaths per minute. So if you practice right now with me, we will take 5 seconds of breathing in and visualize this going into your heart, and 5 seconds of breathing out. And we will do that as a 6 breath protocol. And that's how your heart rhythm, your heart focused breathing actually allows you to breathe like you are beyond 100 seconds on this chart, where you've got this nice rhythmic movement. Okay, this is the 6 breath protocol. This is how it registers in your heart. So let us walk through this particular technique. And so first I want you to, when I say, one more thing, when I say focus your attention, I don't want you to make it a sharp focus. I want you to consider a more wider focus, more focus in a general area. And it's called diverging focus, not a converging focus. So a diverging focus is you're putting an attention in the area of the heart. Okay, you're not actually focusing in, zooming in, laser focusing into the heart. What you're doing is you're just placing an awareness generally in the area of the heart. Okay, so you look at my hands and I'm generally focusing it in the area of the heart. So not a very sharp focus, because that gets us very tense and we want to relax here. So the whole idea here is to give us a general focus around the heart area. Okay, and then you imagine your breath flowing in and out. So let's practice this breath for a few breaths, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to guide you through a 5-minute of meditation where you will do this technique, and then I'll show you how to use this technique in different situations, so you don't have to take extra time from your day in order for you to actually do this. All right, so let us begin now. I'm going to walk you through this, and so now I want you to place a general awareness in the area of your heart, and now I want you to breathe in. And I'm going to count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4, 5. Out. 2, 3, 4, 5. In. 2, 3, 4, 5. Out. 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you do that yourself by just breathing in 5 seconds in and out. Now continue to do this technique, and I will guide you for the next 5 minutes, and we will see how we feel at the end of that. All right, so let us begin this process. Maintain that awareness in the area of the heart, just a general focus. And now imagine your breath is flowing in and out of your heart, counting 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. And just experience that slowing down of the body as you take these slow, deep breaths at your own pace, and allowing your body to breathe very rhythmically. Slow breaths in and out. In here, you don't have to worry about any thoughts coming into your mind. You don't have to engage it. You don't have to block it. You don't have to fight it. This is just your heart breathing technique, where you're just breathing, and it doesn't matter what's coming in and out of your brain. Just placing awareness in the area of the heart brings you more present to right now. And when you are present, as you continue this technique, as you are present with me right now, there are infinite amount of possibilities open for the future. When you start thinking about the future, you lock yourself into a particular destiny. So let us keep that divergent focus around our chest. Let us be present, and let us keep the techniques breathing in and out. 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. Do that for a few more breaths. Maintain that awareness in the area of the heart, and make sure that your breaths are very fluid. That means you're not stopping at the top or stopping at the bottom of your breath. You're just allowing it to just flow very rhythmically up and down. Just make sure your shoulders are not moving up and down, that this is a very gentle, nurturing process. As you draw the breaths in, you are hugging your heart. And as you exhale, you are sending that hugs out to others. So make it very, very gentle, very nurturing. Wonderful. Excellent. And how did that feel? If you want to share that with me. Did you feel your body slow down? Did you feel it accelerating? And here's the interesting part about this particular technique. It's almost like the concept of adaptogens. Okay? Adaptogens are the superfoods you take that if your body needs to rev up the cortisol levels in your body, because that's what it needs to bring balance to your body, it will actually rev up the cortisol levels. And if your body needs to reduce the cortisol levels, it'll reduce the cortisol levels. And all you do is you do one thing, and it'll either regulate it properly, or upregulate it, or downregulate it. So when you do this heart-focused breathing technique, and I hope you do this every day for 5 to 15 minutes, and it's going to be very powerful if you do. When you do this technique, what happens is, if you are in the morning, if you have low cortisol levels, because in the morning you need the high cortisol levels. If you have low cortisol levels, it'll actually increase the cortisol levels in your body. Now that's a stress hormone. However, your body needs it in the morning to kickstart your day. If you have low cortisol levels, when you need high cortisol levels, it'll actually boost it up. But if you have high cortisol levels, when you should have a lower cortisol levels, it'll reduce it. So doing this technique will actually help your body regulate into more of a balance. So if you would like to share with me how you felt, whether you felt your body going down or whether you felt energized, because that'll tell you whether your cortisol levels were dropped or raised. So feel free to chime in and tell me how you felt. At any time, if you want to ask questions, feel free to ask those questions. All right. So let us go back to the actual. If I can find my, here we go. There we go. A second. All right. So we're back. So this particular heart focused breathing technique, and you'll have access to the replay. You can actually go back and practice this for as long as you want. We typically recommend 5 to 15 minutes. The technique I'm going to show you at the end of this presentation, which is really the technique you want to use, which builds on this technique. So you'll only have one technique that you would want to practice every day for 15 minutes. And you can do that, and we can talk about how you can do that without taking extra time from your day to do that. All right, so let us now summarize what we just talked about part one. Remember, I said there's 4 parts to this, and each of the 4 parts has some form of a evidence-based discourse on your aging process. And so I want to summarize part 1 of what we just talked about, part 1 of 4, okay? First of all, your heart rate variability is directly linked to how you age, your breathing rhythm, your heart rate rhythm. And we practiced a technique that regulates that particular rhythmic technique. So your heart rate variability, if you are breathing properly, like we just did a few minutes ago, you are actually slowing down the aging process, okay? Because you're reducing the stress levels in your body. It's like wear and tear on your car. If you rev your car high, you need to wear and tear, there'll be a wear and tear on your parts prematurely. And you have to perhaps repair the car, or the car does not last as long. Similarly, your body does the same thing. When you are stressed out, you are revving your body up. And so your parts wear out sooner and you don't age gracefully. All right. So heart rate variability is one indicator where it is directly linked to how you age biologically. Okay. The greater the variability between the peak and the valley, the younger you feel. So now what you're saying here is that you could be 80 years old and feel like a 50-year-old or younger, just because you have a high variability in your heart rhythm. And that is directly linked to how deep you breathe. When you do the 6-breath protocol, breathing in and out like that, 6 times a minute, or 5 seconds breathing in, 5 seconds breathing out, you will actually build that ability in you to create that peak and valley in your heart rhythms. And so that is the first thing we want to learn about how to reverse your aging process, is breathing right, okay? And it's all about increasing your health span. When we talk about reversing your aging process, what we mean by that, and we talked about this, is that we can live to be 300 years old if we want to. But what good is that if we're not healthy during most of that? So the idea here is we want to live longer only because we want to enjoy life. So we want to have a healthy lifespan, or a health span, because living 300 years, I want to still be able to be mobile, be able to do whatever I want to do, and that's what I want to do. Okay, so reversing your aging is about increasing your health span and decreasing your disease span. All right, and then we talked about applying the heart-focused breathing technique that's pioneered by the folks at HeartMath that will improve your health span. But we'll kick this heart-focused breathing up a notch so that you can use a technique that I show you at the end for everything else. You don't have to remember many techniques. It's just one technique you need to remember that becomes your basic technique. And there are other programs later on next month and the month after. We're going to actually give you more advanced techniques. So when we talk about other topics, you keep in mind that everything that we do after this is you will be actually slowing down the aging process, even though our topics are not about slowing down the aging process. So this is why it was important for me to share with you this before I show you before I do the other webinars, because this particular one tells you that how you take these techniques, it'll slow your aging process, and the other topics which do not deal with the aging process, you will know after listening to this webinar that they are going to actually help you slow your aging process. All right? And we'll talk about that a little later. So that's the summary of part 1. Let us talk about your DNA. Now, don't be afraid. This is not going to be highly scientific. I'm going to bring you scientific concepts. I'm going to share with you what discoveries are made in very easy to understand terms. And the reason I want to share science with you is because a lot of times people don't believe that such simple techniques can actually help reverse the aging process. And what I want to show you is I want to connect evidence with the techniques to show you how they both relate to each other and what scientists are discovering very recently. All right, so this is why I'm bringing you the science. It's not to scare you, but to actually allow your left brain to actually accept these breathing techniques as something that's beneficial to you. All right, your left brain is your logical, rational brain. We have to satisfy that. We have to nourish it. And so this is the process which I want to take you through. All right, feel free to provide any comments that you want, and we'll go through the next part 2 of 4. All right, so let's talk about our DNA. And to talk about our DNA, let's talk about how our cells work. Now, if you look at this photograph, this is a cell, your body's cellular cell, okay? And what we know about the cell is that each human cell has 23 pairs of chromosomes, okay? Those are the blue pairs that you see. They look like a pair of scissors, I think, or pliers on your screen, all right? The blue pair of pliers shaped things are called chromosomes. Each cell has 23 of those pairs, and you see they're joined to the hip there as pairs, okay? And when you talk about each chromosome contains DNA and protein. DNA is actually a blueprint. It's how your body says, build it this way. It's like a blueprint of a house. Protein are the building materials. So when the DNA says and signals, oh, we need to build this particular antibody, the proteins, the DNA, and the DNA provides a blueprint, the protein actually says, okay, this is how we build it. And then the protein antibodies are built. And that's the function of your chromosome, is to actually house the DNA, the blueprint, and the building blocks. So these are very important aspects, molecules in your body. And there are 23 of these in every cell, 23 pairs in every cell. And so this is where your DNA is housed. And your body has up to 100 trillion or more cells. So you can imagine the complexity of how your body functions. There is not a single particle in your body that is not consistent of a cell. So your body is entirely made up of cells, and it's a cellular structure. So every cell in your body has 23 pairs of chromosomes, and each pair of chromosome contains DNA, the blueprint, and building materials to build anything that your body needs to actually function properly. So you can agree with me right now that the health of your cells are very important for your life, for your health span. Let's now look at the chromosome a little closer. Okay, so this is one of the chromosomes in your cell, and I want to bring your attention to the telomere, which is the yellow colored cap at the end. A telomere is like the ends of a shoelace, you know, the protective ends of a shoelace. What that telomere does is actually protects the integrity of your DNA and protein functions within that chromosome. So, you know, your blueprint should not be, it's almost like if you drop coffee on your blueprint and it gets skewed, the builder will not know how to build it, and they may build it the way they want to, but it may not be right. So what the telomere does is it protects the chromosome and maintains the integrity of the blueprint and the protein, its ability to produce proteins. So when you look at the telomere, and we want to talk about this, is each telomere shrinks after a cell division. Now in your body, your cell divides in order to continue to keep your body alive. And so your cell divides because it wants to now create a copy of a cell, and the other cell can die. So it keeps regenerating cells. And you've seen that whenever you cut yourself, the wound heals. That is the process of cell regeneration, or dividing the cells. And so the telomeres shrink after every cell division. This is biological fact. Now, the interesting part is, if you think about back to the shoelace example, where we talk about the ends of a shoelace, like the caps of a shoelace. What happens if those caps are removed? The shoelaces become frayed. And so now the shoelace starts unraveling. And this is what happens when the telomere shrinks to a point where it no longer is able to protect the DNA molecule or the protein chain. Okay? So after every cell division, the telomere shrinks. And we just said, if the telomere keeps shrinking, the cell dies or mutates. This is obviously an undesirable condition. Okay? So another way of looking at this is this particular diagram. Is you've got a chromosome, and you see in this particular chart how the cells divide over time, and how these telomeres, the ends of the cap, shrink after every cell division. So when there is no more cap at the end, the cell does not divide and die. Okay? So your 100 trillion cells are now depending on the telomeres to protect each chromosome. So Elizabeth Blackburn, Nobel Peace Prize winner, the reason she won a Nobel Peace Prize with her colleague was she discovered why we are able to survive even though the telomeres are shrinking. She actually discovered that there's an actual enzyme in our body, an enzyme called telomerase. Now that enzyme, actually what it does is it has its own little printing shop. And when a telomere shrinks, it actually begins to produce and lengthen the telomeres. So in essence, as soon as a cell divides, the telomere, the caps of the end start shrinking, the enzyme gets to work, because the enzyme is just swimming in this area, gets to work and brings it back to that particular length. So it's almost like it's protecting the ends all the time. So as the cell divides, the telomere shrinks, and as it shrinks, the enzyme comes in and it produces a new end. So it lengthens the telomere. And this is a fascinating discovery she made, because what they thought was, now we can talk about what keeps the cell alive and make it immortal. So your cells can actually become immortal. That means you can live forever. That is what they thought. So that's why they were so excited. And here's a depiction of her actual studies. You could see at the top of this particular string is at the end of a chromosome. So remember, we talked about pairs of chromosome. This is the actual length of the telomere. In red is the length of the shoelace end, the little cap. Okay. And what she found out was, as you go down the particular block here where the arrow shows, that every time a cell divides, each cell divides represents the next line down, that the telomere shrinks, but then it's lengthened. And you could see that the length of the telomere is maintained. The integrity is maintained. This is when the telomerase enzyme is present. So what she did was she took a separate culture dish, experimented with the enzyme present, and then she said, well, let's take out the enzyme. And when she took out the enzyme, you could see that there is a cell death happening after succession divisions. You can see that the cell dies without the telomerase present. And so this basically concluded that the telomerase enzyme that's in our bodies is a factor in keeping us alive and keeping our cells healthy. This is a very important discovery, because now what they're trying to figure out is, can we keep our cells alive forever and healthy forever? And that is really the concept of youthing. And of course, this is the fountain of youth. As it so happens, and I'll shatter all your hopes right now, that it is not possible to keep you alive forever. There's a certain limit that the scientists have discovered. Nevertheless, what is clear from all evidence shown, and I will show you this later on, is that we should not die when we do. That our bodies are meant to be living a lot longer than our average lifespan of humanity. So this is the way for us to get ahead of that particular statistical curve, is to understand how we can actually elongate our life to what the lives are meant to be elongated to. And I'm not kidding about the 300-year-old person, because I really think that given what we can do with our bodies, our environment, and the stuff we do in terms of our lifestyle, we can actually elongate our life and elongate our health span. All right, so this is what this is about, is to educate everybody so that they can begin this process of elongating their health span. So let us continue on. Some things to consider, and this is one of the things that is a double-edged sword with the telomerase enzyme. You see, telomerase is high in 80 to 90% of invasive cancer cells. And this is interesting because cancer cells, invasive cancer cells, are known to be immortal cells. They call them immortal cells. It's because they come with their own brand of telomerase that keeps those telomeres long, so the cancer cells never die. As a matter of fact, it actually thrives in your body when you have high telomerase. So if you were trying to say, I'm going to take telomerase, if that's what your thinking process was up to here, saying, I'm going to just toss more telomerase in my body and keep my cells going. But what you need to know is that when you have high telomerase levels, if you do have diseases in your body, the disease cells actually live longer. So you have to ask yourself this question: why do my wounds heal so quickly sometimes, and why does my cell live long? So when your wounds heal, what intelligence in your body tells you that it no longer needs to promulgate that diseased part of your body? Because that cell also has telomerase or telomeres. And so what intelligence in your body tells a diseased cell to repair itself and not and die, but keep healthy cells alive without any drug induction? So that's a question that you may want to consider. Is your body is very intelligent. There's an intelligence in your body that says, when the right instructions are sent, when the proper instructions are sent, there's an intelligence in your body that says, this is not the cell that I want to promulgate. This is the cell that needs to die because we are in the disease state. Here's a healthy cell. I want this cell to promote. So it's important for us to just put that aside in the back of our minds and say, there's an intelligence in our body that is discerning on what is it that it wants to continue to thrive and what it should die off. Okay. Now, of course, scientists being scientists, they have come up with a way to genetically modify the telomerase enzyme to stop the telomeres from increasing, the telomere length from increasing in cancer cells. But in order to do this, they have to actually genetically modify or introduce a drug in your body to inhibit the part of the telomerase enzyme that elongates your telomeres. Okay, so remember, elongating your telomeres means a longer life for that cell. But for cancer cells, you don't want them to have longer life. So they have a way to inject a drug in your body that blocks the telomerase property that elongates the thing, and they've isolated that. Very, very brilliant scientists have isolated that. Now, they're based on the research that I've done, they're able to isolate the enzymes that are specific to the cancer cells. So they may not that particular when you stop the enzyme production or you stop the enzyme's ability to elongate your telomeres, it doesn't do that for healthy cells, based on the understanding I have through my research with the various papers and the information that I've been able to gather. This is still a research area, and there are people working furiously to try and figure this out. Cancer has not been beaten yet, but I do believe we're close. All right. And one of the things I want to share with you later on in a different part is to share with you what are some of the key factors of causing cancer in your body. You'll be surprised and pleasantly surprised, because there's so much you can do about it and it's so easy that you'll be thrilled. And I can't wait to show you. So let's summarize part 2. Okay, let's summarize what we just talked about in the second part of this. There's an enzyme in your body that keeps your cells from premature death. Okay, so that enzyme, when it's present in your body, your cells thrive. Okay, and conversely, if it's absent in your body, then your cells die or mutate. Okay, so we also see that there's high telomerase levels seen in invasive cancer cells. So they're high levels that keep the cancer cells immortal or alive. And if you genetically modify the telomerase enzyme, it will reduce the spread of cancer. All right. We don't know what other side effects it has, but there's a genetically modified way to do this. You can introduce a drug in your body that reduces the enzyme's ability to elongate the telomeres. All right. So now let's talk about part 3. That's the lifestyle choices. Let me share with you a quote from the Nobel Peace Prize winner who discovered telomerase enzyme, Elizabeth Blackburn. In a recent TED Talk, she was quoted as saying, "We have control over the way we age all the way down into our cells." This is a powerful statement made by a Nobel Prize winner and a well-established scientist, a credible scientist. And so she made this statement based on some studies that were done, and she was part of those studies. Basically, what they did was they took 62 healthy premenopausal women aged 20 to 50, and they tracked these 3 markers over a period of a few years. They were trying to measure their telomere length of their cells, the average telomere length, how much telomerase their bodies contain, and the oxidative stress on the cell. So this is what they were measuring. They're saying they tracked these women, and they had children, so they're caregivers basically, and you can understand that they have a very stressful life. So they tracked these women, and they tracked these 3 markers over 3 or 4 years. What they found out was women who exhibited high stress conditions, they had low levels of telomeres. The length of their telomeres were shorter, which means their cells were aging prematurely. They had low telomerase activity. That means there was nothing that was elongating those telomeres. And they had high oxidative stress. Okay, so basically, in other words, what they determined, and this is their own paper, basically says that these women accelerated their aging by 9 to 17 years. They've shortened their life or increased their disease span, basically, from about 9 to 17 years. Wouldn't you like to elongate your life by 17 years or so? Wouldn't that be amazing? Your health span I'm talking about. Okay. Interestingly enough, what they found was this was not the case of women who actually were able to manage the stress well. So women who did not exhibit high stress actually had an opposite effect. They had a high telomere length, high telomere activity, or normal or average, and very little oxidative stress. So women who were able to manage their stress well actually maintained their chronological age with their biological age. All right. This was a landmark study. Even Elizabeth Blackburn, the person who discovered the telomerase enzyme, actually said that one of her colleagues came in and asked her about stress levels and the telomerase enzyme, and it blew her mind because she had never thought about that. And this is what kind of triggered this particular study. So there's a real connection between stress and the amount of telomerase enzyme and the telomere length in your body, which is really referring to the health of your cell. Let me share with you another statistic, and I kind of brought this forward before and earlier. There's a statistic that was provided by the Center for Disease Control. They say that the stress is a factor in 5 out of the 6 leading causes of death. you will see that heart disease, cancer, stroke, and lower respiratory disease are chronic conditions that can be prevented if you check stress, if you take care of stress. You see cancer there? We just talked about cancer. Cancer cells are immortal. Stress creates the cells that become immortal and deadly to you. So you can see that these are actual statistics out there that talk about stress being a factor in 5 out of the 6 leading causes of death, and cancer is one of them. So why are some people in remission and others not? You know, why do 2 factory workers sitting in a polluted industrial environment working side by side, one of them gets cancer, the other one doesn't? So you see, it's about lifestyle. It's about how you approach life, and this is a whole topic unto itself, which I hope to tackle in upcoming webinars. As I said, there'll be one webinar each month, and we are going to be talking about these kinds of things that we're talking about right now. We also know from Huffington Post report that 75% to 90% of all doctor visits stress related. So when you think about your disease span, you're spending a lot of time in doctors' offices for various chronic conditions. And 75 to 90% of those visits are nothing but stress related. If you take care of the stress, you take care of your health span and you take care of your disease span. You elongate your health span, you reduce your disease span. So these are some of the factors in stress. So we know that when we reduce stress, we improve our heart rate variability. That's what we talked about in part 1. We also know that we enhance cell integrity because the telomere lengths are longer, and the telomerase enzyme actually thrives to keep those cells healthy and the telomeres longer. So the cell division doesn't deteriorate the cell itself, all right? And we also know that you're reducing the stress, and the techniques that we do here actually promotes a drug-free homeostasis. By that, I mean is that you don't have to genetically modify the telomerase enzyme to kill the cancer cells. You can actually prevent cancer from happening. You can prevent high blood pressure. You can prevent all these chronic conditions from happening simply by reducing your stress. Okay? And I want to show you, and this of course means you prolong your health span. So let's summarize part 3 before we get into the last part 4. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask. I've allocated an extra half an hour to this program for people to engage and ask questions. So type those questions in if you want, all right? So here's part 3. Basically, there's only one conclusion that we can draw from here. Stress accelerates aging. That's essentially it. This is summary of part 3. As a matter of fact, this could be the summary of the entire program. Is stress accelerates aging, all right? So your biological aging is not the same as your chronological aging. You actually age faster. So let's talk about improving your health span. This is part 4. There's some simple but powerful stress reduction technique I want to introduce to you right now. And there has been studies on this particular and other advanced techniques like this one as to what can happen when you do this technique for 6 weeks or more. Like you do it for 15 to 20 minutes a day, but if you do it continuously for 6 weeks or more, you will receive this benefit. You will actually see an actual improvement in your total cholesterol levels, your blood sugar levels. Your heart rate will actually slow down. Remember, we were revving our bodies high at stress. It'll actually slow down. And your blood pressure will actually regulate itself. This is a very simple technique you can do anytime, and it builds on the earlier technique we did. So let us dive into that technique. Let's talk about that technique one more time. So before we go into that, what I'd like you to do is this technique that I'm about to take you through requires you to list one or more circumstances that made you feel regenerative emotions. So it's very important that these emotions are being felt, and you can summon up these emotions. So I want you to take about a minute or so, and I want you to list one or more circumstances where you can kind of go back to that imagination or go back to that circumstance and actually feel that that joy, that gratitude. Okay, so I'll give you about a minute to find one or two, and then I'll come back. If you feel like putting typing it into the chat area as to what are some of these areas, I may be able to help you. I may be able to help you um, identify if those are the things that, if you can punch it up a little bit more, then it would be wonderful. Okay, so if you can type that in and let me know what you're thinking around these things. So for me, when I think about a circumstance that makes me feel appreciation, love, gratitude, it's really the birth of my daughters some decades ago, 20 years ago. And in this, I always remember that circumstance when I'm standing there and the child comes out of the birth canal, and it's the most beautiful experience I've ever had. And I thought the words out of my mouth were just instantaneous and spontaneous. It was like, oh my God, she's so beautiful. And both my daughters, I've had the same experience in their birth, is my feeling of just that love, that gushing love, every time I think about that situation. And of course, as they grew up and their little antics caused a lot more of those memories etched in my heart. And so that's my go-to place for feeling these powerful emotions. And once I feel these powerful emotions, it's actually jet fuel. There's a direct link between building the telomerase enzyme count in your body and the feelings that you have in your emotions, because the positive emotions actually reduce your stress levels. And the emotions of frustration and anger actually increase your stress levels, which means they deplete your telomerase enzyme. So what we want to do is we want to try and collect and gather all these memories that give us this shot in the arm, this loving feeling, this gratitude. And the higher the power of that emotion there is that the feel, the more powerful the effect on your body. Your health span depends on it, on your ability to tap into this particular emotion. So I want you to, if you can't reach for anything right now that's that powerful, as I have described mine, you will now have to pay attention and be present every day. And when you actually feel a powerful emotion, lock that in. Remember that. You see, your body doesn't know the difference between you experiencing an event in person and actually unfolding before you, or you imagining that event happening. If you bring up the emotions of an event that happened 5 years ago or 10 years, in my case 20 years ago, if you bring up that emotion, uh, it's almost like I'm there when my child is being birthed, and my emotions are the same. My body doesn't know the difference whether I'm actually enjoying the event or I'm imagining on the event. The chemical responses are the same. This is why it's very important for us to actually list or understand what that is. So as I'm going to guide you through this technique, I'm going to be reaching for I'm going to be reaching for my happy go-to place, as I want you to reach for your happy go-to place. All right. So I assume you all have it. Feel free to share if you want and just type it in. So we will do the same techniques, Basically, it is the quick coherence technique, but it's a heart-focused breathing technique that we did earlier. With the third step to it is just to activate the regenerative feeling. This is what we just talked about. Okay, so for me, it's going to be the birth of my daughters. Each time that they were given birth, it was a feeling that I go back to. For you, it may be something different, maybe similar, maybe a pet, or a family reunion event, or a friend's reunion event, whatever it is. Let's reach for those emotions because that's very important. All right. So let us start on this. I'm going to guide you through this. Okay, and we're going to do this for about 5 minutes. Okay, and then I'm going to take any questions if you have any. We'll go right here. All right. So let's start by focusing our attention, a very divergent focus, a very broad focus. Just make awareness in the area of the heart, not a very laser sharp focus, but a very general focus in the attention in the area of the heart. And then use a 6 breath protocol. Count to 5 as you breathe in, and count to 5 as you breathe out. 5 seconds breathing in, 5 seconds breathing out. Okay, and visualize these as imagine these are going out of your heart and into your heart. Okay, so just take the slow deep breaths. Count to 5 breathing in, count to 5 breathing out. And then the third step is to actually begin to feel this joyful emotion. Just bring that joyful emotion into the mix. And when you do that, you will see that your immune system, and if you were to measure your immune system, it will go up because your immunoglobulin 8, A, which is an immune protein, will actually be produced by your genes because you're sending that signal. And this study has already shown, many studies have shown that you can actually, by doing 15 minutes of this, you can increase your boost your immune system for up to 6 hours. So when you do this activate regenerative feeling, you're actually building proteins that aid in regenerating your cells and actually increase your health span, and also providing that intelligence in your body that discerns between the disease cell and the healthy cell without using drugs. Okay, that was my promise to you, and this is how we do this. So let us begin. Focus our attention in the area of the heart and imagine your breath flowing in and out of your heart or chest area. And begin to breathe a little slower, a little deeper than usual. Perhaps count 5 seconds breathing in, 5 seconds breathing out. Take these breaths just very slowly in and out of your heart. And now begin to activate this feeling. Just bring it forward and activate the regenerative feeling. And the more powerful this feeling that you experience right now as you're breathing in and out, the higher the likelihood of your cells maintaining their integrity and longevity. You are now reversing the aging process. You are now slowing down the time in your body. And this is enough to celebrate that by doing this for 15 minutes a day, that your body can recover, rejuvenate, and you will look and feel a lot younger. Slow, deep breaths. Visualize these flowing in and out of your heart and experience this regenerative feeling. Continue to do this for the next few minutes. Notice if your shoulders are moving up and down. If they are, take gentler breaths. We want this to be a fluid experience. We want your breaths in and out like a nice fluid motion and rhythmic motion. Do not stop at the top of your breath or the bottom of your breath. Just make it fluid, like a rhythm. And it's like a dance, very soft. And just activate this regenerative feeling and put a smile on your face. A gentle smile on your face will do wonders for triggering the telomerase enzyme. The intelligence in your body is now at work as you do these techniques. The intelligence in your body is now discerning between compassion, love, gratitude. It's discerning and allowing you the ability to regenerate those cells and to repair those disease cells. And perhaps when a disease cell divides, the intelligence in your body will send it instructions not to copy the old disease cell, but to go into your stem cells and produce a better copy, a more healthier copy. It is the stem cells that produce the telomerase enzymes. They're one of the cluster of cells in your body that produce the telomerase enzyme, and they have a blueprint that is original blueprint of when you were born healthy. So the intelligence in your body is reaching for the blueprint in the stem cell to replace that blueprint in the disease cell. And all it's doing, it's just tapping into this emotional jet fuel that you're providing it. So the more powerful the emotion, the more powerful the ability of your body to regenerate. Slow, deep breaths. Visualize these flowing in and out of your heart, breathing a little slower, a little gentler than you normally would. And activate a regenerative emotion. Wonderful. So this is what we want to do for at least 5 to 15 minutes a day. And you can do this technique anywhere. You know, my favorite go-to place to you do this technique is as I'm waking up in the morning. When I wake up in the morning, I automatically do these deep breathing techniques. While I'm just in that just waking up phase, I do these techniques, and then I imagine something wonderful, and then allow this to happen. And you can lay in bed for 5 minutes. I'm sure you can hit the snooze button and time yourself when you hit the snooze button. So you don't have to do anything extra beyond that. You just have to do it while you're engaging life. If you are sitting in a bus somewhere, going to work or going somewhere in a bus, you can do this then. If you're driving, you can do this while driving, keeping your eyes open. This is not meant to be a sleepy-headed meditative state. It's meant to be an active, alert state, because your body either needs to boost up the level of cortisol in your body or to downregulate it, depending on the situation. So when you do this technique, it's while you're actively engaged in life. So I encourage you to do this technique whenever you can, because you have to breathe anyways, and you're going to feel emotions anyway. So why don't you choose what to breathe and what to feel? And that is the program for today, is actually reversing the aging process. So thank you so much for joining me for this advanced class series. before you go, I do want to share with you what's upcoming in the following session. So on November 4th, we're going to talk about the law of attraction and how to avoid common mistakes. One of the things we will do is we will practice actually manifesting our desires by using some of the techniques, more advanced form of techniques that we've studied today. And again, like I said before, when you do these techniques, you are actually reversing the aging process, but at the same time, I'll show you how to put it out there so that you attract the desires. And I'll give you a story about how I have been able to successfully create my own future. And I'll show you the steps I took and the steps that you may want to take to achieve your desires. All right. On December 9th, 2018, I want to take you through more advanced techniques to take a deep dive and uncover your highest potential for 2019. Okay. So this is where we actually, on the heels of law of attraction and avoiding common mistakes, on the heels of that, we want to now be able to put it out there and then establish a path to uncover our highest potential as we move down this path. So we want to set the stage for 2019. And again, it's going to be the advanced class series. The format will be similar to this format. It'll be an hour and a half with half an hour left for any Q&A. So if you have any Q&A, by all means, put that out here. Again, as part of the Ignite membership, this is all available to you at no cost. All right. If you're not an Ignite member, there are a few people that are not an Ignite member. They just chose to be, take this particular session. You can certainly join the Ignite membership, and it'll be a lot less costlier for you if you do this under the membership rather than paying for one-offs. I hope this was a useful exercise for you. All the best to you, and the replay will be available to you very shortly. I'll send out another link. All right. Take care. Talk to you soon.